What is up, Ronnie? Happy Friday, sir. Happy Friday the 13th.
Happy Friday the 13th. Yes, it
Yeah.
is.
Did you my wife was telling me after I dropped my kids off this morning something about getting text messages from some of her girlfriends saying that hey, they're not sending their kids to school because suppose that they're getting some type of crazy warnings or threats. Did you hear anything about that?
Yeah, I think it's a global threat.
A
So
global, the whole world is
yeah,
in
so
on
more global. So I guess that came out, I don't know, yesterday or whatnot. So
it. All
yeah, we
right.
got something from the school. Obviously they're increasing security and what, but they said there was no credible local to us, right, threat. So school was still on, but yeah, I think some people are keeping their kids home today.
Yeah, because I noticed the traffic was a little bit lighter than usual, and I was having that conversation with my wife. I'm like, yeah, she's like, oh, I'm like, what? Well, my
Yeah.
school didn't notify us, and they didn't tell us. No, maybe they did, but hey,
Yeah.
the times that we're living in, man. So it's just crazy times, man. Crazy times. Outside of that, just want to thank everyone for tuning in on this weekly live show with myself and Ronnie, the Mortgage Dad. This is show number 4, actually. Appreciate you guys just tuning in. Our main focus is just to kind of bring information and facts on what's going on in the market here in South Florida when it comes to real estate. So my name is Garaudy Joseph. I'm a local real estate agent here in Broward County. Been doing this for over 10 years, and I got my partner Ronnie Farley. If I'm saying, how do you pronounce your last name? I always mess that up. Go ahead, Ronnie.
Everybody does. Yeah, that's going on. Ronnie Fairley over here, the mortgage dad. I get Farley, like Chris Farley,
Yeah,
Fairley, Farley. So yeah, it's one of those ones that looks easy, but it's not.
got
Um, so yeah, obviously here in Florida and New Jersey is where I do loans. So that's pretty much the areas I focus on. Been doing it for just going around 8 years now. So
beautiful.
yeah.
Speaking of New Jersey, I actually had lunch with a potential client of mine from New Jersey, a couple over the age, I think they're in their mid 60s. They're thinking about, they plan on retiring down here, and being a South Floridian, I had to ask them the question because, being from Miami, but moving to Broward about 10 years ago, I was just surprised by the number of Northeasterners that live down here. And I asked them, like, hey, why do you guys pick South Florida? You got the Carolinas, you got Georgia. They basically said the weather. They said the
Yeah.
Carolinas and Georgia's nice. Don't get me wrong, but it still gets cold. I'm like, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of even people I went to high school with, right? Back
Yeah,
up years ago. It's funny, even they're not retired yet, but a lot of them are starting to slowly come down here. So seems like a trend.
hey, bring them down here more. The more, the merrier, man. So,
Yeah.
all right, so let's go ahead and talk about this week's topic. Um, We're going to talk about the Wall Street says homes are overpriced. An article came out this past week basically indicating the home values throughout America is at a price point where it's basically overpriced, and they just wanted to share that information and let people know that hey, that is the reality. That's been the case for quite some time. And just here in South Florida, I guess my take on what Wall Street says as far as homes being overpriced, there is some truth behind that. It is priced. It basically is priced out a segment of the population that can't afford it. That's just the reality. But another reality behind that is people are still buying homes at these price points, and they're buying it because they can afford it. And on your end, Ronnie, you're seeing this. You're seeing your job is what, approve people for loans, and
Yeah.
let me know like these people are able to afford these mortgages at these price points.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy as we're ticking on like a 23-year high in mortgage rates. For
Yeah.
some reason, I want to say the last 2 weeks, my business has kind of picked up. Like it's ticked up. There's more couple of people coming out. So I don't know if it's that time of the year, people that want to move before the end of the year or what, but it's crazy. It's so hard to predict what's going on. But yeah, I think with the Wall Street, I think came from the Wall Street Journal says homes are overpriced. Yeah, I think everybody thinks that, right?
Yeah.
Housing prices have skyrocketed over the past couple of years, but again, it all goes back to the supply and demand, and I think we're over 1 million houses short, of what we really need out there, and it's like we don't know
And
where
this
these houses.
this is nationwide, I believe, right? A
Correct,
million.
yeah, nationwide.
Okay. Okay.
And it's like, where are these housings coming from? We know building is kind of behind. It was behind before COVID. Now it even fell more behind once COVID hit. And for most of you that may not know, when a builder buys a plot of land to build on, it's almost about 4 years before it comes to tuition and people can start buying that. So we know a
Yeah.
history from someone that bought a land 4 years ago. It's kind of just being on the market now. So we kind of see, when people bought things 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 1 year ago. So they don't really see, the shortage going away anytime soon. The only thing I heard that may come into play, I don't know how much, is once interest rates come down. So
Mm.
right now people are they call it the golden handcuffs. They got that 3 or 4% interest rate. So they're staying put. They may
Yeah.
want to move, but they're not trading a 3%, 4% mortgage rate to a 7.5%, 8% mortgage rate. So I think once mortgage rates hit in the fives, some of these people may make that move, and that could bring a flux of listings, some more inventory to the market. How much? We'll kind of have to wait to see, but then there's going to be more buyers. So, it's one of those things. You just don't know. Obviously, that's bringing more inventory, but all these buyers that are not
Just
buying
get
are
on the
going to come.
sidelines.
So, it's, I'm just trying to think, what are we not seeing?
And what about the homeowners that have no mortgages and they're in a position where, hey, I want to downsize. I have no mortgage, but if I, I wanted, but rates are just too high. I'm willing to entertain possibly getting a mortgage on my next home because I want to kind of keep some cash on the side, but it doesn't make sense, I guess, financially to go ahead and pull that trigger and put my property on the market because, granted, hey, I'll get cash from I have a boatload of cash coming my way because I have no mortgage, but hey, rates are too high to where I don't want to, go ahead and pull that trigger yet.
Yeah, I think you also look at, where are we economy wise, right? So I think we just hit, I don't know how many, over $1 trillion in credit card debt. So I can really start seeing in the next few months it start paying off, where people are going to, whether default on credit cards or default on just loans, just because loans have skyrocketed with the Fed's raising the Fed's fund rate, just all interest rates, commercial rates. Everything is just so much more expensive to carry that debt. It's kind of scary. I hope I'm wrong, but I feel like in the next, maybe by the holidays or just after the holidays and everybody's holiday shopping, we could be in a rude awakening for some of these people that, just overextend. And sometimes you just can't help it, right? The cost of living is so much higher that they just have to. So,
and speaking of overextend, because I know the past couple of years, a lot of companies have come out with these payment plans where, hey, you may not be able to pay this particular item in full, but you can pay as the bare minimum $20 a month. And they're really targeting us, I guess, that segment of the population that have a certain credit score. So to your point, people are kind of stretched thin, but also, like Warren Buffett says, I will never bet against the American, consumer. People find a way to spend money.
and
they're stretched themselves so thin to where they're like, hey, let me see what I can get. Until they can't get approved for another credit card, they'll just keep on. Not saying it's right. It's just, just the way the society is.
It's the way society, the way Americans live, right?
Yeah, you're right about that. That's the way America
lives. And I will say, I am getting more people thinking, obviously, a few months ahead of time, that they have maybe this decent interest rate. Obviously, you don't want to get rid of that interest rate, but people come into situations, right? So I need to either pay off this credit card, or something happened in the house, or I need this improvement, whatever it is, right? Life happens, and they want to get into their equity of their home. So there's a couple different ways. Obviously, you can refinance, and really numbers don't lie, right? So people generally live on that month to month, right? How much money am I bringing in each month, and how much am I spending, right? Whether it's your debt, your groceries, all that sort of stuff. And believe it or not, when you start running the numbers, even if you have that 3 or 4% mortgage, you have to look at, hey, you've got this almost 28% credit card debt. And once you kind of combined everything together, it may be worth refinancing, getting a second mortgage, a HELOC, something, right, to help offset set that. So if you're
I
out there
can
in,
go ahead.
no, I was thinking, so if you're out there and you maybe see this coming up, the time to act is now.
Mm-hmm.
Reach out to a mortgage professional, talk with them, run the numbers, because, and again, I keep saying this, I think I said it in one of my last videos, the time you start missing payments, it could be too late, because obviously no one wants to lend people money when you start seeing all these late payments.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I actually ran into a scenario where this woman decided to refinance her home because mortgage free, because she wanted to pay down some debt. And
Yeah.
from a number standpoint, it made sense. And even though she did a a refinance, so brand new
Yep.
mortgage on her home, but it was only a certain amount. I think it was like $90,000, but it was just enough to kind of pay down her debt, and her rate was 7%. But when she did the
Yep.
math, she said, "Hey, I can afford this." So there's you just have to look at your situation and see how that makes sense to you. And speaking of making sense, even with the Wall Street saying homes are overpriced, I do want to kind of share with the viewers some data as far as what's actually going on down here in South Florida. All right, give me a second. I'm gonna go ahead and share. We're gonna go ahead and share our screens here. All right, so this data is coming directly from the. All right. Yep, my glasses. All right, so data's coming. This is actually the second quarter of this year. That's the most recent data that we have. Main thing, just want to keep it simple and focus in on, hone in on is the median sale prices of townhomes and condos here in South Florida. South Florida being Palm Beach, Broward, and Miami-Dade County. We're looking at $330,000 for this second quarter of this year, compared to this time last year's $320,000. That's about a 3% increase year to year from second quarter of last year to second quarter of this year. So that kind of gives you an idea of what the price is. So we're seeing some appreciation, nothing crazy, but
and just real quick on that, I think that's like the healthy appreciation, right?
yes,
3 to 5% is kind of what, when things are running smooth, that's kind of what you want.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people, we've been getting these crazy appreciations of 15, 20% over year, which is just not the normal. So you'll see some media, right, news that, usually fear drives people to read articles. They'll start saying, oh, appreciation is down some percentage, right? But yes, because we're coming off the highest I think we've ever seen in a 70, 80 year period, whatever that is. So
it happened very drastically, very quick. Yeah, well said. And even to your point, we was talking earlier as far as increase of inventory, what's kind of what will possibly trigger the market as far as seeing more homes coming into the market, as far as maybe rates dropping and people that are on the sideline as far as debating on whether they want to sell. They're realizing, okay, now it makes sense to sell because now I can use this cash to buy a home at a more affordable price. But one thing I noticed, if you notice the inventory supply of in the second quarter of last year compared to this year, as far as townhomes and condos, it went up almost by twice the amount. So it shows 2.2 months of supply of inventory as far as condos and townhomes in 2022 for the second quarter, compared to the second quarter of this year. We're almost at 4 months of supply. My understanding, and I guess the facts behind this, is anytime you have 6 months or more supply of inventory, you're in a buyer's market. Anything below 6 months, you're still in the seller's market. And
and just to bring this up too, is something that, I know we talked about this in the past, so keep an eye on this. Condos and single family homes are obviously two different, say, types of real estate. And with all the new laws and regulations going on due to that unfortunate incident in Surfside down in Miami with the building collapse, there's a lot of assessments going on, people for whatever reason. So I think that's why when we just look at condos and townhouses, the inventory may be a little bit higher because it could be many reasons, right? People now can't afford the special assessment that kind of came up, so they have to sell, or whatever it is. Maybe they want to move to, the building's older and they don't, they just don't know what's going to happen in the future, whether other assessments. So it's something to kind of look at, because I think in the next year we may see a big difference down here in South Florida between the condo market and the single family market. So it's something definitely to keep an eye on.
No, great point. I'm glad you mentioned that, because it really didn't go into effect. I think the law went into effect during this year, right? Early in the year. as far as all the regulations pertaining to condos?
Yeah, so there's been talk and certain things trickling out over the last year or so, but now all the condos are kind of getting on board. And again, if you're out there in the market and looking at a single family, if you're looking at a condo or townhouse, if you see a special assessment already that has X amount of dollars, I actually consider that a good thing. That means they've already looked at the community and you kind of know what you're going to get. Now, if you don't see that special assessment and you think, wow, these HOA dues are low, to me, that's telling me, all right, well, something's coming down the pipeline, because majority, unless it's a newer building, but if it's 30 years or more, there's going to be some assessments coming in. So that's why I like when I have a client and they see the special assessment, I talk to them. This is kind of a good thing, because now you know what your payment's going to be versus getting that lower HOA and sometime in the next year get hit with whatever that may be.
Yeah.
So,
no, and that makes a lot of sense too, to where I'm telling a lot of my clients, depending on where they're at in their life and what they can afford, it makes more sense to entertain buying a condo or a townhome, because it's in your price range. Because if you compare the numbers that we just shared with everyone with townhomes and condos, and compare that to single family homes, if you look at the median price of single family homes in this quarter of 2023, we're looking at 605 compared to 589 this time last year. So that's about a little under 3% increase as far as home values, which, like you mentioned earlier, that's what you want to see in a healthy market.
yeah.
But as far as affordability, you're looking at buying something worth $600,000 compared to 330 when you're looking at a townhome and a condo. It makes more sense. Hey, if that's your price range, let's focus your attention on that. So now one other thing I want to kind of bring attention to everyone that's watching is the month of supply and inventory. We're looking at about 2.3 months of inventory in 2022 for the second quarter of that year compared to the second quarter of this year. It went up a little, like we have basically a little like three months worth of supply. So it's still an indication of what? A seller's market, because anything below 6 months supply of inventory is an indication of a seller's market versus above 6 months of supply is a buyer's market. So just, going back to the whole purpose of this, as far as the topic is Wall Street say homes are overpriced. Here in South Florida, they're priced at basically where they need to be based off the economics as far as supply and demand. And right now, we still have an inventory shortage, and the price points are where they're at for those who can't afford it. So it's just more so just know where you're at in your life, and and having that honest conversation with your team. Your team meaning your lender, your real estate agent, and your home inspector. Everyone that's part of your team.
And I think, so 2 things to point out here. You see here the single family home, there's 3 months supply versus the 4 months. And it should be interesting as the months go on to see if there's a bigger gap between that single family and condos going future of the inventory. And 2, with the whole Wall Street says homes are overpriced, and you kind of hit on it, is location, right? So in the pandemic, there were some rural areas in the middle of nowhere that people just wanted to go, right? And buy and just kind of, and it boosted a lot of real estate up there. Maybe you'll see some of these other places maybe now have, if there's not so much demand there, maybe you'll have, some decline in prices there. So I think when in the future, when say prices go up, down, or whatever, it may be more localized. And that's why it's important to have that local team with you to kind of know what's going on, especially if you're moving from out of state into a new state you don't know much about. You definitely want to talk to somebody that kind of knows the area and kind of know what's going on.
And speaking of talking to someone and talking to the right people, because that's the biggest thing I tell all my clients. The reality here in South Florida, we have a lot of people that are in the real estate industry, from the lending side to the retail side, as far as realtors, which is why I always tell them, you just want to talk to people that are experienced and seasoned in what they do. And also if they've actually owned a home or are homeowners, so they understand what it really means to pay property taxes, what it means to pay homeowners insurance. In the case of you and I, we are homeowners. We've been homeowners for a while, and also we're in the business. So I just want to let people know that we are offering our services as a team, where you can actually book a one-on-one appointment with me and Ronnie and just kind of talk about where you're at in your real estate journey, whether you're in the market to buy, to sell, to refinance, to invest, whatever it is in real estate. We're here just to provide some value, to you, and some information that we believe will help you on your journey in real estate as far as where you're at personally. So I just had to kind of throw that in there so you guys can see that in the description. Book a one-on-one based off of your schedule, and we'll be happy to provide any value to you the best way we can.
And one thing just to add to that too, which since talking about that we've owned houses, you know, we're both investors too. We both own multiple properties. So obviously we're not just talking to the person that's looking to buy a primary home. Obviously investors, we both have plenty of experience of owning our own property and, you know, having some advice on that. So anybody looking to get on the investment side.
Well said, well said. Now going into topic number 2, Ronnie, are we heading into a housing market crash here in South Florida?
Good question. My thought is no. Obviously, you never know. Obviously, looking at 2008 and all that, you know, you never know what you're not thinking about, right? So I always try to think of different angles that maybe not everybody's thinking about what's going to cause us into a market crash. Obviously, crash is in everybody's mind because of 2008, right?
Yeah.
But I think, my opinion, I think the worst case scenario is going to be maybe a correction, which is maybe prices may get 5 to 10% lower than where they're at.
Yeah.
That could be a year from now, 2 years from. I don't know when that might happen. Maybe that's when all the inventory, these people decide that, you know, okay, interest rates are in the 5s, so all the people that have been holding off for the last, you know, year and a half decide to sell. I don't know. You know, I don't think we're going to do a crash. A couple of reasons is 42%, if I'm not mistaken, of housing does not even have a mortgage, right? So usually to have a crash, you need to be people that are desperate and need to sell.
Well said.
And 2, so many people have a tremendous amount of equity in their home, so they wouldn't need to short sale it, foreclose it, because they can just sell the home, right? Okay. So it's not like with the way the appreciation has gone, it's not like 2008 where all of a sudden, you know, appreciation was not as it was the last couple of years, and then people got caught. And then obviously the demand really got less, and there was so much housing on the market.
Yeah.
So just, you know, you can learn from that, but just looking at those statistics, trying to compare it to 2008 and just the current condition, crash is a big word. I think it's thrown around a lot that people just say crash because that's what everybody remembers. But my opinion, worst case scenario is maybe we'll do into a correction, and it may not hit every market. It may just be certain markets. So. And
you brought up a couple of things that we haven't taken into consideration. You mentioned the fact that a number of homeowners that don't have a mortgage, and they also have a lot of equity in their property. So, you know, it's those two factors are factors that are a positive. That's going to be kind of difficult to even entertain seeing a crash. Like you just mentioned, a correction makes more sense. But even with a correction, when I think about this, you think about the fact that, hey, you still have a number of buyers on the sideline because, hey, they realized the interest rates are too high. My purchasing power is lower than it was a year ago. I'm willing to wait it out. As I'm waiting out, during this time, I can improve my credit. During this time, I can just build up more cash. And whenever the market does see an influx of homes, or we see an influx of homes into the market, I believe it still won't be enough to match the number of buyers who are waiting to actually purchase at that time. Because like you mentioned before, as far as new construction, it takes 2 to 4 years before you can actually see a new construction come into play. So that's down the road. So you take all these into consideration. In reality, and I should change this, heading into a housing correction, maybe that we should change that to more so correction. Whenever that does happen, it's still going to be at a point where the price is going to be, you're still paying a premium price for purchasing a home here in South Florida, because we all know real estate is local. We also understand that there is basic one-on-one economics behind all this, which is supply and demand. So will we ever see a point where we'll have more supply than demand here in South Florida? In the near future, I say no. Now, down the road, maybe. So it's just more so, once again, where you're at in your position as in your real estate journey. And you have to be honest with yourself, and that's the way I look at it. I'm looking at, hey, where we're at in today's market. You can't really, we don't have control of the future. We have control of what the reality is today. So with that being said, I'm in the same boat as you. I see a correction, but a crash, no.
And one thing I don't think too many people are talking about is not many builders are building single family homes. They're building,
yes,
multifamily, right? So the new thing is
or mixed
use, right?
Yeah.
So it's restaurants,
Yeah.
retail on the bottom, and then build up. That seems to be, I guess the biggest bang for your buck if you're a builder, right? You can get more homes in a square foot area, but that seems to be the hot thing. And to build a new home, obviously with all of inflation and prices going up, I remember, I forget who I was talking to, I think it was my cousin, and he does, redoes bathrooms, and he said even like the copper and just the different materials it takes to build a house over the last few years just skyrocketed percentage wise. Some of these things may have been like a little fitting, right? Might have been 60 cents, but now they're like 220 or whatever it is. That percentage wise, that's a lot. And once you add up all this stuff when you're building a house, you can't build a house relatively cheap anymore. So, you don't really see single family homes, depending on your area, especially here in South Florida, you don't see them under 700,000, 800, depending on the area. So it's, so again, if you're looking for a single family home, I think in the future, we're going to see there's always going to be a demand for that because there's just not many people building them anymore.
Yeah, I'm glad. A great point, because we're seeing a lot of construction going on here in South Florida, but it's more either mixed use or apartment buildings. So if you're in the market in the near future to buy a condo or a townhome, you'll probably be in a better position to find something that's more in your price range just because of just the inventory. But to your point, single family homes, it's going to be a little bit more challenging to find something that's as far as seeing a real strong correction in that specific market. So I'm glad you brought that up. Great point. So, with that being said, we went over two good topics. I believe we provide a lot of value. And one thing I always like to bring to the viewers out there, the main purpose of the show is just to add value to you guys. We want to provide facts and information on what's going on here in this market. And, you get it from both angles, from the a realtor's perspective, along from a lender's perspective. So I believe that today's show was pretty productive. A lot of value was added today. And I got to emphasize once again, we are going to have in the description a link where you can actually book a one-on-one session with myself and Ronnie to talk about where you're at in your real estate journey and how we can add value to you. Because the biggest takeaway I have with everyone that I speak to is making sure that you're getting information that works for you, and that's information that actually adds value to where you're at in your real estate journey. So,
and I'd like to add just one thing to that is, we'd like to hear your opinion too, right? So comment below if you say, hey, maybe you're in, I'll say Nebraska, and you can say, wow, yeah, Nebraska's market is that. We're say experts in the South Florida market, right? Because we really look at the numbers. And one thing I try to be is, neutral, Switzerland. I just look at the numbers. I don't try to say, oh, it's a great time, you should buy a house because I'm in the real estate industry. I'm just looking at the raw numbers and trends that we see. So I try not to be biased, right? To say, hey, but so there's some situations where, depending on your situation, now's not maybe the right time to buy. And, we'll have that discussion, but we'll get a game plan on, hey, let's do this, this, and this, and then you might be ready to buy or whatever may happen. So love to get your comments. Tell us the area that you're in, what you're seeing out there. And like Garaudy said, we're more than happy to do a little free consultation and just have a conversation with your situation.
Beautiful. Well said. So, all right. So this is my recording number 4 coming to an end. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Appreciate you guys just spending your time out your day listening to us, and we'll continue to provide value every week moving forward. So, appreciate it, Ronnie, as always, man.
All right, man. Have a good weekend.
You too, man.
All right.